Thanks for joining us for a web exclusive. I'm Mike Montecalvo, along with Eyewitness News analyst Lieutenant General Reginald Centracchio. Occupy Providence, what's going on in Libya and Afghanistan. But first, General, let's talk about the ROTC program, or maybe lack thereof, at Brown University. We're finding out now that they're going to expand the program a little bit and put an office on campus.
I was on active duty in Rhode Island at the same time that the ROTC was taken off campus in 1972. But since then, they've had at least one individual in the Dean of Students office acting as somewhat of a liaison to give guidance for those that wanted to go out to ROTC at another facility, specifically PC. Now they're looking at establishing a total office, which I think is a good step forward to perhaps someday see the ROTC program come back into Brown like it is going back into Yale, Columbia, and Harvard.
Well, this is a program that actually started like in 1916, and basically they do this for, money to go to college, right?
Yeah.
And then move on to military service. So what is the hang up at Brown? If they're doing the office, how come they cannot recruit and keep soldiers on campus?
I think it's just a philosophical difference between what Brown University feels is important to establish on the grounds of the university, being an ultra-liberal college, versus the military. Right now, they're looking, even when we repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell, that wasn't enough. Now they want to look at transgender aspects of it and the hierarchical command authority within the military, which is not going to change. So there's some philosophical change that they need to see that probably won't happen.
The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan playing any part of this?
Absolutely. Current war policy, administration policy, all of which leads the president to Brown president to not allow it back on campus. There's been a lot of effort by some of the student groups on the campus to bring it back in the last year or so.
Well, if you look back, you were mentioning in the early 70s, the Vietnam War played a big part in why the ROTC program left Brown University. Right?
Correct. That was the reason. Back in the 72 era, was asked to leave the campus because Brown University, as well as some of the Ivy League colleges, didn't believe that the Vietnam was a just war. So consequently, they left. Now we're seeing those ROTCs come back into the Ivy League colleges, with the exception of Brown.
Well, you're talking about Ivy League. We can also talk about what Providence College has an ROTC unit, and Bryant University too.
That's correct. PC is the recipient of those going to Brown University that want to go to the ROTC program, but they have to actually leave the campus and go to their training at PC, obviously in Bryant too.
So is the only benefit, financial support, or what are the other benefits?
No, I think,
of the program?
financial certainly is a consideration, but I think what we're looking to is ensuring that the military is a recipient of well-educated leaders, and this is an opportunity to have the Commissioned Officer Corps getting the highest education possible, and certainly that bodes well to increase the overall capability of the military itself.
This is nothing that can start at the top, the White House or anybody like that, to make it mandatory?
It could, but I think herein lies the problem. Brown University is at odds with the Obama administration at this particular point, as it was with Kennedy and all of the other presidents that we've seen since then. And I think when you start this kind of effort, it has to start with the political aspects of it. As an example, and there's a disconnect. They don't allow the military ROTC on the campus, but they do allow debate, and they do allow the different presidential candidates to conduct their campaign efforts within the campus itself.
Why?
That's
really
a good question. That's a disconnect, in my opinion. Here, the military is a functional part of the executive branch. They don't make policy, they enforce it. The executive branch makes policy. That's where the real concern should be with Brown University and those professors that would suggest they don't want ROTC back on the campus.
Okay. General, let's talk about the Occupy Wall Street movement that's going on right now. We've seen some problems in Atlanta. We saw a lot of problems in Oakland, California, where police had to fire tear gas at over 100 demonstrators. It has been very mild in the city of Providence, but they don't want to leave Burnside Park. We're at the point where Public Safety Commissioner Stephen Perry says, if you don't get out, we're going to go to the courts. Why doesn't he just turn around and arrest them for, let's say, trespassing?
I think what you're doing is you're looking at, once again, a liberal approach, and specifically, I believe that Tavares is a liberal individual. And in fact, he participated in meeting with those that are camped in.
Is that a good move, walking to them and then answering his questions?
I don't think so. I think what it did was to show somewhat of a, a change from what you're saying and what you're doing. They have to realize that their agenda is not well articulated, and it doesn't belong only with Wall Street. It belongs with the elected officials that allow Wall Street to do what it did. So I think when you have the elected officials being part of that, when they can in fact do something about it, it doesn't send out, it sends two different messages. Eventually, he's going to have to be faced with evicting them, and I think what he's doing is trying to get the court on his side to be able to say, okay, you have the legal authority to be able to move them.
But does he need the courts?
No, not in my opinion, no. I don't think he does. I think he's just trying to have a more of a basic authority to be able to say, we're moving you, we tried this, now we went to the court system and they're agreeing with it.
Well, you look at Oakland General and it got way out of hand. You look at Providence and it hasn't. Is that part of the problem maybe for the Public Safety Commissioner, that they've been basically peaceful so far?
I think so, but I think, the issues in Oakland, as well as some of the other cities that have had problems with arresting individuals, had really nothing to do, for the most part, with any kind of abuse of ordinances and so on. It had everything to do with the sanitation, and it had everything to do with public safety on expanding beyond the immediate area that they initially went into. So I think we're going to be faced with the same thing here. It's not going to be because they happen to be occupying Burnside Park, but it happens to be because they are creating, in my opinion, a sanitation problem as well as other public safety issues.
Well, the mayor did say that they need to get them out of there to clean up for the winter. Before we switch topics, has their message been lost anywhere? Are the politicians or the people on Wall Street actually watching or listening to them?
I don't believe they have. I think they have spent a lot of time trying to get a message out which has not been well articulated. It's my opinion that as I look at this whole thing, they're better off to be able to go to their elected individuals who have made and changed the laws over the years to allow Wall Street to do what it did. So Wall Street doesn't make laws, they follow laws. The individuals that are responsible for allowing these financial institutions to do what they did and to receive stimulus money over the last several years is not Wall Street's doing. It's the elected officials in the Congress of the United States that allows this to happen. They should be taking their gripes to them and articulating it well, and they haven't done that.
Turning our attention to Afghanistan, Afghan forces and President Karzai is saying they're getting closer to their security forces taking over. Afghanistan has something like 34 provinces. They think they've secured 17 so far. What would that mean for U.S. troops? 2014 is a viable date to get out of there?
The missing ingredient that Karzai keeps forgetting to talk about, and it bothers me, is that those 34 provinces are only secure because of United States presence and NATO troops presence in that area. Once they leave, that total responsibility comes in the hands of the Afghan government, specifically with security and military forces. I don't believe you're going to see that in the next year or so. And I think we're starting to really get some concern by his statements over the last several days, meaning that if we were to go to war, as an example, with Pakistan, he would be on the side of Pakistan. That's scary stuff.
So what do you do if you're the Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense at this point?
Well, at this point, I would probably, once again, I know it's radical, but you have no option. Either we're going to do it now or we're going to do it later. If we don't get total support out of Karzai, understanding that he has to back United States interest in our own national security, after we're gone, leave tomorrow. And I think that's an option that we better start looking at right now. We're going to be faced with that one of these days, just as we're faced with it now in Iraq.
Well, in Iraq, are those soldiers coming home? Not all of them are coming home. I think that's the misconception, General.
You're right.
They think, they're home for the holidays, they're not going back. They could be redeployed somewhere else, including Afghanistan,
Correct.
right?
There are 27 Rhode Islanders involved in this whole movement to remove troops from Iraq by 31 December. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're coming back to Rhode Island. They could be redeployed either into Kuwait or perhaps Afghanistan or some other place in the Mideast.
All right, General, finally, Libya. It's been a 7-month mission so far. The people there still want NATO to continue their security there. When is it time to back off and get out of there?
I feel it's, and when you have an established government, which we have not seen, we don't even know who the leadership is of Libya at this particular point. There's a myriad of a composite effort by radical militiamen to some legitimate concerns within the government to put somewhat of a package together. That's not well defined at this particular point. So I'm not sure this is the time, because we don't have any boots on the ground in Libya. But the NATO mission continues, and I think we need to do that until we see some kind of stability and then get out.
When do we see the mission turn to Syria, or boots on the ground in Syria?
You know, I'm not sure we'll ever see boots on the ground in Syria, but we'll certainly see the same kind. And the only thing we should look forward to, if it's possible, is that the Syrian people themselves take out, the leader in that particular country. And if we don't see that, there's no way we're going to go in unilaterally to take him out.
Well, President Assad doesn't look like he wants to go anywhere anytime soon.
That's correct, but he's not going to have a choice, perhaps, as did Gaddafi as well as Saddam.
Okay, General Centracchio, thank you for your thoughts, and thanks for watching.